Hi everyone, my name is Megan Carver. I am the Associate Director for the Kohler Center for Entrepreneurship, and I'm the co-director of the 707 Hub at Marquette University. I'm also the chair of the EWL Event Committee, and I'm really excited to welcome everybody today for our first Deconstructed Professional Development Day session. Next slide. So what is the Deconstructed Professional Development Day, you ask? Well, every fall, we normally host a big one-day professional development in-person day in the fall. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic and like almost every event, we've had to really reimagine this day and really figure out what does it look like in a virtual environment. So we've been working really hard to develop some virtual content that we will roll out in the next couple of months to you via Zoom. Next slide. So we want to make sure that we are hitting the mark. So we sent out a survey to everybody. You might remember taking this, hopefully, back in May, and asked what are some areas that you'd really like to focus right now, because we understand that things have changed. So in addition to the event committee, the programming and engagement committee have also been working hard to put together programming around these different topic areas. So again, we'll be really focused on these throughout the summer and encourage you to attend as many of these sessions as you can. So today we're going to focus on career growth during a pandemic. We're also going to look at resiliency and confidence, positivity and mindfulness, and then we want to keep the networking going. So let's try some facilitated happy hours via Zoom. Next slide. So you're probably wondering, how do I hear about all of these great events coming up? The best way to do so is to keep tabs on the Monday message. We'll continue to communicate any events that are coming up there. We also have a very active Facebook group, so if you haven't done so already, definitely join that. We're always posting about different opportunities on that. And feel free to ask. Mara, Kelsey, any of the chairs, vice chairs of these committees are happy to talk to you and let you know what's ahead in terms of programming. Next slide. I just want to give a big shout out to Baird and thank them. They are our supporting sponsor for EWL in this event today. Next slide. Just some basic housekeeping items. All of you are muted. Your videos are disabled, but we want to keep this interactive. So the chat and the Q&A are live. Please don't be shy. Enter in your questions. We will be monitoring this throughout the event, and Natalie will actually be answering some questions throughout her presentation as well. So please don't be shy, ask away. Additionally, we do have an interactive activity planned throughout this presentation. So if you don't have one, grab a piece of paper, a pen, a note card, a marker, whatever your heart desires at this point, just something to write with, and join us for the activity. Next slide. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our keynote speaker, Natalie Forward. Natalie is Managing Director of Senior Talent Strategist at Novo Group, and her expertise is solving complex people challenges. Her curiosity about people and how they navigate work has kept her energized and motivated in the human capital space for almost 2 decades. She attended UW-Whitewater and received a bachelor's in organizational communication with a minor in HR. She's a proud Tempo member and is very active in the community, serving on several boards. In her free time, she likes to volunteer, entertain friends, and go running. So I'd like to thank Natalie so much for giving us her time and sharing her expertise with us today to help us really maximize our skills during these uncertain times. With that, I will let Natalie take the floor. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It's Natalie Forward. I'm assuming that you can hear me and see me. If you cannot, please chat away and let us know so we can fix that. And thank you, Megan, for that really, really nice introduction. I always like to give a little bit of a personal introduction I've been with the Novo Group for 4.5 years. We do talent acquisition and talent development. I love this space. I love working with organizations on their people. And if you have any questions related to talent acquisition or talent development, certainly you can always reach out, Natalie Forward at thenovogroup.com. On a personal note, I'm married to a guy named Kevin Forward. He's the one there in the glasses. And we have an 11-year-old son named Danny. And if I wasn't a managing director at the Novo Group, I would either be a school teacher for real littles, so think preschool, or a star of the Food Network. So I'm towards the end of my career here, but if I pivot, watch for me on channel 1450 on cable. All kidding aside, if you ever need to use an icebreaker for your meetings, I love to ask the question, what would you do if you're not doing this? Because it's a great way to get to know each other. And I'm privileged to be the very first speaker as part of our Deconstructed Professional Development Day. I can now consider myself a pioneer, and all of you participants are pioneers as well. So we're making history today. Every good meeting, ladies, as you know, starts with an agenda. And so this is what we're going to cover today. And we're going to do it in chunks. That's a very technical term for sections. But my goal is that we are going to cover some new strategies that you can use during this time of uncertainty. Then we're going to talk about performance expectations and the skills that employers will be looking for from you and me. And then 4 areas of emotional intelligence, as well as we've got some resources and next steps for all of you. Now, you might be saying to yourself, Natalie Forward, how are we ever going to get through all of those topics? And I would say, I'm not quite sure, but we're going to try. The goal when I met with Megan and Cassie and Marit and the others from the EWL Professional Development Committee was really, how can we make almost everyone happy? How can we add value to you so that, you know, at 1:05 today, you can take a new idea, a new topic, a new trick, if you will, and use it in your professional or personal life. Sound good? Okay. As Megan mentioned, we want to try to make this interactive. So what we're going to be doing is taking questions and answering your chats per section. So as we're talking about new strategies, if there's something you have a question about related to new strategies, that's a great time to be asking, and then I can respond to that question. All right, so here we go. And I'm going to ask us to start with some introspection. It's noon, so maybe some of us are ready to close our eyes. If you don't close your eyes, I want you to take a deep breath. And we're going to talk about all of the things that have changed since March 16th, 2020. Do you realize that that was only 92 days ago? For many of us, that feels like a lifetime. But what I would like you to do is either, you know, get a pencil out and check this off, or just take a mental checklist for yourself. And as I read these things, I want you to ask yourself, has my life changed in this way? So, where I work, how I work, if I work, where, when, and how I exercise, what I eat, when I eat, where I eat, how I grocery shop, what I wear, when I shower, if I shower, who takes care of my children, who takes care of my parents, where my children learn, who teaches my children, how I physically greet neighbors, friends, and colleagues, where and how we go to church, our perspective, etc., etc., etc. I would imagine that all of us have checked many of those items off of our list. that almost everything we see on this page has changed in 92 days. And guess what? We had very little control over it. We had very little notice, and we weren't even allowed to really plan on how all different areas of our lives would be affected. And yet, oh, and I want to say, many of us probably felt, and maybe still do, confused, scared, less confident, upset, mad, fearful. You know, the list of emotions goes on and on and on. And I remember thinking to myself, like, 4 to 6 weeks into this pandemic, come on, Natalie Forward, why don't you have your act together? You know, you're a top-notch kind of gal. Why don't you have your life together? Or why 1 hour are you feeling great and 1 hour are you not feeling so great? Well, there's actually some science behind why I was feeling that way. And I am not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but you might remember a guy named Maslow, who introduced us to a hierarchy of needs. And ultimately, I'm not going to use all the right technical terminology. Our needs are in categories, and ultimately, one category is built on the next. And so as a human being, I am able to grow, I am able to thrive, my confidence goes up, my motivation goes up as I fulfill the needs in the different categories. But take a peek down to that red box at the bottom of the pyramid. It's physiological needs: air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, and the ability to reproduce. You could argue that although most of us still have shelter, almost every item in that category has been disrupted, let alone self-actualization at the top of that pyramid. So if you've had days where your motivation has been questioned, or if you've had days that you're just concerned about how I'm going to get through the next 8 hours of work, so much of it is because even sometimes our basic needs haven't been met. So my question to all of you is that why would we think we can operate exactly the same way we did before in completely different circumstances? Now, I think the answer is because many of us on this call are top performers and we think we rule the world, which many of us do. But it's really unrealistic. It's silly that we would think that the strategies that worked 93 days ago all will work today. So as you can see, it's tempting during a crisis as severe as COVID-19 for leaders to respond to big problems with bold moves. And I want to just stop here and say, I don't know what your experience has been with your leadership, but it's my opinion, we need to give them some grace too. Like, most of those individuals have never been through a pandemic and they're learning as they go. And I'm always a positive intent person. So my hope, my thought, my belief is they're doing the best that they can. The best way, however, for leaders to move forward is not by making gigantic changes, rather introducing a gradual, improvisational, quietly persistent approach to change. So you may or may not have heard of a gentleman named Carl Wick. He actually did this study and published it in 1984, so a while ago. He was a theorist and professor at the University of Michigan, and he coined the phrase small wins. And a small win is a concrete, complete, implemented outcome of moderate importance. So I don't know if any of you have ever had like a big project that seems overwhelming. I can give an example. The storage side of my basement is a bit out of control right now. Now, I know in my head, Natalie, just spend 15 minutes a day or go through one box at a time. But sometimes what happens to me is I look at that big side of the basement and I think, this is overwhelming. This is way too much for me. I'm going to stop, I'm going to do nothing. And so I stop. What Carl is suggesting here is let's go for small wins versus big, bold moves. On the other side of the coin, there is an advantage to small wins, and that's small losses. Now, I'm not really a person that likes to look at failure, but the content on this screen ultimately says, if you're not doing a bold move, you're not going to make a bold, you could make, let me get this straight here. If you're going to make a bold move, you could also make a really bold mistake, and others around you are watching. They don't want to make bold mistakes. Most of us don't. But if you're making small incremental changes, if you make a mistake, it's just not going to be the end of the world because it's small. I wanted to share with you this "don't let fear paralyze you." That is a quote from one of my mentors. Her name is Susan Winke. I haven't seen her in many years, but she's still one of my mentors. And she would always say, Natalie, don't let fear paralyze you. And so I would say that to all of you. If you're thinking about making a move, maybe you don't have to be bold move, small incremental changes. Now you might be saying to yourself, Natalie, 1984, come on, bring us to current times. And so I will. I want to introduce you to a gentleman named Darren Roberts. I don't know how many of you know Darren Roberts. I call him one of my new acquaintances. However, really, I'm just one of his many thousands of followers on LinkedIn. I do want you to know I reached out to Darren Roberts and shared one of his strategies. I told him I was going to be talking to all of you today and that I would be sharing his strategy, but he hasn't responded back yet. So anyway, Darren Roberts, former NFL coach. He is a Harvard Law graduate. He is a professor, a motivational speaker, and author. Anyway, he took this concept of small wins and calls them micro wins. And so every day, Darren Roberts sets a mini goal in 3 categories of his life: health, family, and work. And as you can see, he gets out his index card and writes them all down. So as on 6/11/2020, his micro wins and goals were to submit an op-ed, to read a kid's book about belonging, and to run 8 miles. Now, I would argue running 8 miles does not sound like a micro win to me, but it's all in perspective. But as you can see, he made 2 out of his 3 goals there. And I took some liberties and added others. So every day I get up and I set some micro wins. And actually, I would say I don't do it on Saturdays and Sundays. Darren does. And I date it. I write FHWO, sometimes in different orders. I set a family goal. I set a health goal. I set an others goal, and I set a work goal. Now on 5/18, I only hit 2 out of my 4 goals, as you can see there. But on 4/28, I was able to get 4 out of 4. Do you think that I didn't set any goals on 5/19 because I only got 2 out of 4? No way. I still set a goal. It's still, these things are still important to me. They still give me a sense of control and confidence. So I was going to ask you to set some micro wins right now, but to be respectful of time, we're going to keep moving forward, and then we can go back to the micro wins at the end of our time together. I want to make sure that you guys have some ideas and options for new strategies in this time. And these are my ideas. So I want you to, if you need it, if you're feeling uncertain about your performance or your job or your life, I want you to go find an old performance review from before March 16th, 2020, make it a good one, and read it. And read all those amazing qualities that your leaders and colleagues commented about you. And remember, you are still the same person. Call a trusted friend, mentor, or colleague. So if you're feeling like you have a work project and you're not certain on how to get it done, reach out to somebody who may have done that type of work in the past. and then remember to pay it forward. Who's a friend, mentor, or colleague that you haven't connected with in a while that really needs to hear from someone? Take a break from social media. I had to do this one right away because I would hop on Facebook and see all of my friends being perfect homeschoolers, and then looking at my kitchen table and recognizing what was going on at home. And there was a big gap between those two pictures. So that worked for me. Try something small you are scared to do and do it. If you haven't read Mel Robbins' book called The 5-Second Rule, I'd recommend it. It is an easy read, and she can get you motivated to do things you might be scared to do. Examine what or who is serving you well or not so well. So it's possible there's someone in your work or professional life that sucks energy out of you versus provides you with energy. And I would just say, hey, evaluate who those people are, and you might need to limit your exposure to them. I hope all of you have been going outside, meditating, breathing, and doing some mindful activities over the last 92 days. And check out a new author on LinkedIn. I introduced you to Darren Roberts. If you're in sales or any type of customer experience, I'm a big fan of Ryan Estes. So he's somebody to check out too. Now, I'm assuming you just are compelled with my voice and my content, but I think that these presentations always work better when we can bring in some other voices. So I'm really excited to introduce you to a woman that you may or may not know. Her name is JESSI Young. So JESSI, take yourself off mute and add video, please. And JESSI joins us from Advocate Aurora Healthcare. She is going to talk to us about how she transformed a program using some new strategies. So welcome, JESSI.
Thanks. Thank you so much. It's so funny because I talked to Natalie maybe a week ago and just told her what I'm about to tell you. And I want you to know that I didn't put this story in this way to fit what Natalie was saying. This is just what I needed to do for myself. And it's amazing how on point everything that she's saying is, and that I need it in my life. So I run the internship program for our corporate internships at Advocate Aurora, and I've worked on them for about 7 years. When I started doing them about 7 years ago, there really wasn't a streamlined, centralized, structured internship program. And so I was the only person working on them, building resources and trying to gain clout to develop it and expand it within the system. And it was a lot of work. It was 7 years of work. And over the last year, I've been able to work on a strategy, and we got it approved by all the higher ups, and we were going to officially implement this structured system process internship program. And then COVID-19 happened. And so at the end of February, we stopped recruiting and focused everything on frontline COVID-19 work. So it was a lot of anxiety, as you all know. It was trying to stay relevant, trying to help, but trying to also think, if the internships to some extent or my regular work is still going to come up in summer, how do I do this? How do I shift? And I definitely took some breaks and some naps, and I had a panic attack and did some meditations and took care of myself. But I also am a perfectionist and a planner, just like most people, I'm sure, in EWL, and wanted to plan for as many possible outcomes as I could come up with. So I started gathering research from, organizations, schools, contacts, people I know, created a few SBARs, which I didn't go to school for business, so I only learned about those a few years ago. I got my master's in English. So I wrote up a couple of SBARs and really tried to look at what a virtual internship experience would look like. What I did is talk to a few experts in the area. So I had a new team member who was also someone who started with our organization right when we went to remote work, and has not met anybody in person as of yet. But she worked at a Fortune 500 company, and she's been a leader and worked with interns in campus relations for a long time. And she was sending me all her resources and her ideas and her toolkits and about virtual internships. And it was so overwhelming. And I was feeling really like, I can't do this. I'm bad. I don't know what I'm doing. And I just had to take a breath. Whenever I get anxious, I need to like change my environment. So I went out on my balcony and just was breathing. And I happened to listen to the Brene Brown podcast where she talks about FFTs, which is the effing first time. And because she's like, I'm an expert. I'm about to do this podcast. Why does it feel like I don't know what I'm doing? I'm not good at this. I can't do this. And she's like, oh, this is because it's a first time for me. So I sort of had this revelation that like, I need to give myself grace and I need to be nicer to myself. And it feels this way because this hasn't happened before, but I'm also an expert and I know what I'm doing and I just have to shift. So I looked at, what do I already have? Who are the leaders already willing to take on interns? Who were the candidates we had? Who was everyone involved, and how do it doesn't have to look like 7 years of work, because it's not going to be. It's going to be 1 month of whatever I can shift and using what I have. So I talked to the leaders who were already interested. Some of them are like, yes, we can give interns a good experience virtually for maybe 4 to 6 weeks, and it's going to be great. And there were students interested in that too, which was amazing. So my confidence was back up. I tapped into what I already knew. And then I happened to have this awesome conversation with Megan Carver. Hey. And she had to shift to virtual sooner than I did in spring. And she was saying, well, here are some of the really great things about this. Students want to be engaged. What you're doing is important on any level. You want to do right by people. You're doing the best you can. So it's going to be good, and that's okay. And then she even gave me a few ideas that helped me outsource some of the work I'm doing, which was amazing. And she's like, since the students, they're looking for development, why not have them run some of these professional development events and rework things so they can do it? And I was like, what? So doing less work, knowing I already had built up a great program, knowing that I have a great rapport with people and students when I meet them and that we're doing the best we can, it's freeing. And I have to keep reminding myself once the students come, but I think my favorite thing was giving myself grace and knowing that things might not be perfect, and that's okay. And it's okay to just do the best you can. And smile and be nice to people. And I'm excited. I'm excited for the students to start, but I'm especially excited that doing the best I can is enough,
It absolutely is enough, Jessie. Thank you for sharing your story with us and being vulnerable. We certainly heard you were nervous and anxious and scared, but you are the expert. You called a trusted friend. And I know you're going to give those college kids a really good experience. So thank you. Thanks for sharing with us. Cassie, I know we wanted to see if there were any questions relevant to the new strategies section of our agenda. I do want to mention it's 12:29, and although I practiced this so that we would get into our hour time together, I do want to be respectful of everyone's time and future content. So is there 1 or 2 items that you'd like to bring to our attention, or does it make sense to just continue moving forward?
So just a reminder to everyone on the call, if you have any questions, please make sure to type it in the Q&A or chat. And I think I see one coming in now. I know that I saw a hand raised too, but unfortunately we can't bring you in. So please make sure to use the chat and Q&A functions to bring those in. We have a question. Do you recycle mini goals that you do not achieve? And if so, do you reset them the next day or the next week or even farther?
Well, the answer is it's up to you. But I recycle mini goals all the time, because the truth is for my health, there's probably 3 things I'm concentrating on all the time. I'm also a big handwritten note person, so I bet twice a week I'm saying I want to write a handwritten note. It really depends on you and on your day, and I think what motivates you. So I recycle, not the actual card, but for sure the goal. All right, Cassie, should we keep moving forward here?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So before we end our section on new strategies, I have two parting thoughts for you. And the first one is just one of my favorite quotes, which is comparison is the thief of joy. Some folks think Teddy Roosevelt is the one that came up with this. There's other authors credited as well, but this one just personally for me, when I'm comparing myself to others, other things, other people, other results, I'm taking all away my joy. Who wants to do that? So if you're finding yourself comparing yourself to others, try to stop and celebrate your joy. And then this is my quote, give yourself and others grace and a lot of it. We're all doing the very best that we can do. All right, everyone, we're going to move on to section 2, which is skills and expectations. I want you all to consider, to some degree or another, your job has changed. We already started with all the things that have changed since March 16th, but some of us more severely than others. If you used to be in outside sales, meeting visitors, customers in their buildings, there's a really, really good chance you are not doing that right. So you were an outside salesperson, you are now an inside salesperson. If you are in human resources, your job has turned upside down, around, and through the tunnel again. Your job is different. And since many of us are still working remotely, I would argue all of our jobs are different. So we're going to spend our first couple moments here talking about expectation setting with your boss. If you have already done this, bravo, congratulations. If this is not of value to you, don't check your email, but you can skip over this section. But I do want to share something really interesting with you. I'm part of a HR leadership roundtable, and we met this morning, and I asked these leaders how many of them have communicated new expectations to their team, and only one woman rose her hand. So if you embark on this, and I would highly recommend you do, know that you are a pioneer. Two pioneers. So I'm going to take you through the framework of how to do this. This is one framework. If you have a framework that works better for you, just fine. On this first slide, we're just going to go through the steps. But I think what will be more helpful is that I have then taken these steps and put them into a real conversation. So this is from Business Insider. And I would say that if you have not approached your boss or leader about new expectations, try your best to take emotion out of it. And then secondly, the goal of all of this is to give you clarity, to give your leader clarity, so that you have alignment, but ultimately to give you confidence, to be like, I know what's expected of me. I know I'm capable of that work. And so here we go. So our framework is first to get permission or be clear regarding your request. Ultimately, that means schedule ahead and let your leader know what you want to talk about, which includes explaining the situation and the context. This will make a lot more sense in a moment. Really, really important. Bullet point number 3, frame the conversation gracefully. So all of you that are in roles where you need to influence and persuade and propose, you know how important a graceful intro is. You want to state your issue. Again, no emotion here. And this says ask for their perspective, but really ask for their advice, for their buy-in, for their content. Arrive at a mutual understanding, and then arrive at a resolution. Now, I will argue that when you get to that mutual understanding, make sure you're comfortable with what the new expectations are. If you are not, now's the time to speak up because you initiated this conversation. So let's take a look at how this could look in real life. And I want you to know this. I did this very, very early on in the pandemic with my boss. Her name is not Mary. This is not exactly how I did it, but I'm certainly happy to share the results of that conversation. So in an email, you could say, "Hi, Mary. I'd like to schedule some time to review your expectations of me, considering so much has changed over the last several months. When is a good time for you? So this is what's on my mind. I just want to schedule a call. What works for you? May I have your permission to do this?" You know, I know we typically discuss these items on an annual or quarterly basis, and I am not asking for a review. Rather, I just want to make sure we're aligned. So here's the situation. This is the context. This is why it's important. Okay, so those two things potentially would be in an email. And then when you're talking to someone, you might want to say, "I certainly want to continue to perform at a high level, and your approval of my work is exceptionally important. So I thought we should have this conversation sooner than later." Frame the conversation gracefully. Now, some of you may or may not like the word approval, and so I will let you decide if that works for you. But it certainly says, "Hey, boss, you're important to me, and your opinion is important to me, and that's why I'm here. So based on X, Y, and Z, I'm curious to learn what, if any, of your expectations of me or my work has changed." Now, your X, Y, Z might want to be, in my case, it was, my customers are handling COVID right now. Many of them are not hiring anymore, and budgets have been decreased. So those were three things that were on my mind that potentially were going to prevent me from the previous expectations that we had agreed to. And then you say, you know, have you given this much thought, and or have you had a similar discussion with others? So you're giving them, you're ultimately asking for their perspective, but it'll give you an idea if they've even thought about this. Even if they haven't, that's okay. They know you're thinking about it. And then you're going to have your conversation, and you want to mutually understand each other. So if I understand you correctly, you'll be evaluating my outcomes or the deliverables versus my daily activities, as that's what's more important to the business and our clients. Yes, yes, great. Let's plan to connect again in the next several weeks to make sure our goals are aligned and are still relevant to the business and client needs. So again, you may have to plan this out and have the courage to do it, but I'll tell you, early on, I just said to my boss, her name is Kelly, "Kelly, gosh, a lot has changed. What are your expectations of me?" And it was great. My expectations of myself were so much higher than hers were of me. And we talked about, you know, my quota wasn't going to be the same. And then we talked through the things that she's going to measure me on in this uncertain time. So it really gave me clarity and confidence and a sense of relief. I want to, make sure I mention, you know, your boss baby, better than I do. So, please navigate your boss's style to make sure that you have a successful outcome. If they've never talked to you about performance ever, this may or may not be the time to talk to them. If you are not stressed out about this, if you have clarity and confidence, don't do it. It's not required. The golden rule is treat others as you would like to be treated, but really the golden rule in leadership is treat others as they would like to be treated. So if you know you have a boss that's a planner and they never, they want to be prepared for this conversation, make sure you're giving them notice. If you have somebody that likes to talk off the cuff, go for it that way, but treat them how they want to be treated. And then finally, do not make this a surprise. I don't think you'll get the outcome that you want. When Megan and I and Marit were strategizing for content today, they said, people want to know what are the skills needed post-coronavirus world. And I will be 100% transparent, as hopefully I always am. There's not a lot of research on this because we're not post-coronavirus yet. But Forbes is the leader, if you will, on this type of information. And ultimately, these are the top 8 job skills to succeed post-coronavirus. adaptability and flexibility, tech savviness, creativity and innovation, data literacy, critical thinking, digital encoding skills, leadership, commitment to lifetime of learning, and emotional intelligence. To Jessie's point about not planting material, I did not plant emotional intelligence, even though it's our third content section today. And based on time, we don't have, we aren't going to be able to go through all of these. But if you are looking to like, how can I succeed? And if there's a couple of areas that you want to concentrate on, I would say adaptability and flexibility. That would be my first one I would go to. We're all living that today. I actually heard Becky Frankowitz, the leader, North American, I think she's president North America of Manpower, talked about adaptability, flexibility, and learnability several years ago. Not surprised it's still at the top of the list. And leadership. If any of you are leaders or are on the leadership track, the better leader you can become, the better outcome of your team. So I want to introduce you to a woman named Jana Moore. Jana, if you haven't taken yourself off of mute, please do so now. She is with the African American Chamber of Commerce, and she is going to talk to us about a couple of the new skills she has had to use in her work. Welcome, Jana.
Thank you, Natalie. So I am Jana Moore, once again, with the African American Chamber of Commerce, and I am the program manager here. So I offer all of the programming that we do for the minority businesses here in the city of Milwaukee. And so when COVID happened, some of the new things that I had to adjust to really quickly was being able to pivot. That was like the biggest thing that I had to quickly adjust to in the work that we do. So a lot of the programming that we offer, or all of it, is in person. And so because we were all working from home, had to take the time to quickly figure out what was going to work next. And so like many other organizations, we took everything that we did and moved it to a virtual setting. And so I oversee 2 entrepreneurship programs throughout this time. And so we had to quickly take everything that we did and move it to a virtual setting and allow the participants to still get the experience that they signed up for in the midst of what was taking place. And so that was a really huge adjustment, but it was something that I had to allow myself to be flexible with, but also quickly pivot to in order to still be successful and make sure that they still receive the tools that they needed to be successful in their businesses. And then also another big thing was being able to change my mindset. And so being able to not only change the entrepreneurship track, but also all of the programming that we offer to all of our chamber members throughout the year. And so we've taken all of the programming that we do and we move all of it virtual, but then I had to get creative in how we were going to offer all of the programming. And so we decided to turn our program into a series of webinars that members and non-members could take part in throughout COVID to help them with their businesses. So whether it was learning about finances, or what does their business look like post-COVID, or how do you move forward during COVID with your business, how do you change your marketing and branding strategy, anything that was going to be successful in helping them reach where they needed to go was something that I had to really work on and work towards. And so with the mindset piece, also knowing and realizing that I was balancing more than I normally would if I was working in person with everything that I do. And so we also had grant opportunities that we were offering to entrepreneurs during this time. It was a like COVID relief funding that we had an opportunity to be a part of. And so having to run the programming that I do, but also help with the grant process that we provided to small businesses, and having to vet through all of the applications that were being submitted, and having to balance all of that at one time was definitely, it was a challenge, but it was a great experience and opportunity for me to learn how to be creative, how to be flexible, and how to be open to change, and what the new normal could potentially look like moving forward, whether it's doing everything virtually or splitting my time between virtual and in person, and just being able to adapt quickly and doing it in a fun and creative way.
Jana, you are an excellent student, because if we look at the 8 job skills, you talked about adaptability and flexibility, tech savviness, creativity and innovation, definitely some critical thinking. I don't know if you're a coder, so I can't go there. You definitely had to step up and be a leader, but emotional intelligence really speaks to that mindset shift. So nice work, 6 out of 8. I'm impressed. We'll be running this webinar next time. I'll watch for you. All right, Jana, thank you. Cassie, I'm just going to scoot ahead here to our next topic to be respectful of the time. Great. And then we'll catch up at the end. So ladies, believe it or not, we are to our final topic of the day, which is emotional intelligence. This one's near and dear to my heart. I love talking about and studying and getting better at EQ. And I will say this, as we move through COVID, and now we are all faced with some big social justice and injustice issues, EQ is going to be more important than ever before. So if you have not studied emotional intelligence, I just got the chills when I said that, please dive in. Now, Novo Group offers EQ seminars, and we have half-day sessions on this. We're going to try to cover some content in 10 minutes. So please, I don't want to do it a disservice, but I do want to give you the introduction, and I want to give you one practice opportunity in your own life. So let's start out with what EQ is. So emotional intelligence, or EQ, interchangeable words, but ultimately we all have emotions. Emotions are actually a physiological experience that modify behavior or thought. So I feel scared and I am short of breath, my tummy might hurt, I have physical response to that emotion, and then I have thoughts. Oh my gosh, I don't want to do that. What if something bad happens to me? I'm scared. Emotions are not good and they are not bad. They are just emotions. How we respond to those emotions can lead to a positive outcome or a negative one. And that's what emotional intelligence is. So it's our ability to recognize and understand our emotions and our skill at to manage ourselves and our relationships with others. Don't forget about IQ, folks. Remember, IQ is cognitive intelligence. It's our smarts. It's our scores. Emotional intelligence is how we manage our emotions. And we are made up of 3 parts. So we all have IQ, we all have personality, and we all have emotional intelligence. Now, if we were live and together, I would say to you, 2 of these 3 categories are hardwired and do not change. 1 does and can and will and should. And you would guess, and some of you would guess wrong, unfortunately, but that's what makes it fun being together in person. So our IQ, after we're about 16, it doesn't get any higher and it doesn't get any lower. Our IQ is our IQ. You can study harder, but that's just changing behavior, but your smarts are your smarts. Although many of us think we can change others' personalities, sometimes our husbands or partners, the truth is we can't. I am an extrovert. I get energy from people. Does that mean I can't modify that extroversion from time to time? Of course. But really, you are who you are from a personality perspective. But EQ, emotional intelligence, is a skill. And because it is a skill, you have the opportunity to practice that skill and get better at it. Why should this matter? Other than, I think it's really important. So 90% of top performers have high emotional intelligence. EQ is responsible for 60% of our job performance. And who doesn't want to do this one? On average, people of equal skill set in similar roles, folks with higher EQ can make almost $30,000 more than their counterparts. And we all love Maya Angelou, don't we? And she tells us that she's learned people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but they will absolutely remember how you made them feel. Emotions are feelings. We actually experience anywhere between 400 and 1,000 emotions a day. Now, those don't all get to our conscious level, but it is definitely happening to all of us. These are the 4 areas of emotional intelligence: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. So self-awareness and self-management. I have emotions. Now, how do I manage them? You have emotions. How do we manage together? In a nutshell, those are the 4 areas of emotional intelligence. So when we talk about self-awareness, and this is where we can all start. This is the starting place. How do I and can I accurately identify my own emotions and tendencies as they happen? Now, the key here is as they happen, because if I have an emotion, if I recognize I had an emotion 2 weeks ago, but I can't do anything about it, I wasn't very self-aware. So this is in the moment. Oh my goodness, I'm feeling sad, scared, nervous, happy. Okay, that's okay. No judgment, it's just the emotion. But the real work starts when I say to myself, how do I manage my emotions and behaviors to a positive outcome? I'm scared. How do I make this positive? If you can learn self-control, you can absolutely master anything. But anyway, this is what I wanted to show you today. This is called the trigger model. And after this, we are going to hear from one of your other colleagues to give us an example of how she managed some emotional intelligence, if you will. But we all have triggers. Triggers are things that happen. And our triggers are all different. So a trigger is an action often completed by another person. So for instance, some people get triggered when someone speeds past them on the highway. Some people get triggered when someone doesn't say you're welcome. I get triggered when my husband leaves coffee cups all over the house and doesn't pick them up. We all have emotional reactions to our own triggers. And the fear is that I am going to react without managing that emotion. So I see my husband's coffee cup, I'm mad, I have some choices. And the recommendation here is that you start to develop something called self-talk, which is just something in your head that you repeat over and over again. Something like, it is what it is. It's not that big of a deal. He's a really good guy. Because what I want to do is be able to either walk past that coffee cup without responding, walk past that coffee cup, maybe pick it up and put it away, versus see the coffee cup, get really upset and throw it at him. That would be a negative outcome, and we're trying to get positive outcomes. I want to introduce one of your colleagues here, and her name is ANGIE EMREY. She's with Northwestern Mutual, and she is going to talk to us very quickly about her experience with how she started becoming self-aware and managing some of those emotions.
Thanks, Natalie. So I think that I consider myself a pretty self-aware person like Natalie. I'm really intrigued by and do a lot of reading about emotional intelligence. And so I'm pretty in tune with my needs and emotions and pretty good at communicating them. I'm also real fond of structure and routine. And I didn't realize until I had sort of an aha conversation with my therapist that I want to tell you guys about a couple weeks back, was how much the routine and structure of my life was automatically carving out time and priority for some of those really basic physiological needs that Natalie mentioned earlier. So some examples of that: I had a commute to work that was, 45 minutes both ways. That was automatically built out quiet time for myself to do with whatever I wanted. I saw my colleagues get up for lunch at 11:30, starting around 11:30, and that was like a trigger in my head. Oh, it's lunchtime, go and eat food. I might not have been hitting 10,000 steps a day, but meetings in different buildings caused me to walk around, move my body. I had to be up at a certain time, so I was going to bed at a consistent, reasonable time, getting enough sleep, feeling rested, recharged. Physically moving location, so going from my home to my office, told my brain, hey, turn off mom brain, turn on work brain. It's time to focus on this different thing in this different environment. So all of those things, as Natalie showed on that slide, just kind of disappeared as of May 16th. And all of my structure and routines were gone. That much I knew, right? I was feeling exhausted. I was feeling overwhelmed. I couldn't focus as much. I definitely was lacking patience with my husband, with my kids. I chalked it up to, this, and said, well, that's a shit show, so it's no surprise that you're feeling tired and overwhelmed. And it wasn't until Kathy, my therapist, said to me, Angie, do you think your needs are getting met? And okay, on an average day, I'm a full-time working mom of twin 3-year-olds. If someone asks me, are your needs getting met? I'm gonna laugh at you because no, answer, easy. But I realized Kathy wasn't talking about those kind of romanticized things of self-care. She wasn't checking are you getting mani-pedis? Have you had a massage lately? Are you going above and beyond? She was talking about, are you eating? Are you sleeping? Are you getting quiet time to yourself? Are you moving your damn body? Those foundational elements. And it was so alarming to me that as a self-aware person, it didn't even occur to me in the midst of all of this that I wasn't protecting the basic things that I needed to be a functional human being, let alone a patient mom, a productive employee. So this revelation is still only a couple of weeks old, so I'm figuring out what those behaviors are. But some small things that I've done is I have a note card. I can see it right here. It's at my desk, and it lists those things. It says nutrition, sleep, focus, move, care for my kids, quiet time to myself. It stares at me every minute of every day. I've communicated it to the core people in my life. My husband knows that I'm fiercely protecting the hell out of things like sleep. So if he says, let's watch another episode, and I say, no, it's bedtime, he respects that. I am setting alarms. I'm setting reminders to go to bed, to get up and move, to have a snack, and literally creating this checklist for myself, because along with all of those other things that changed at the beginning, we're also just not as easily meeting those physiological basic needs. And when we don't, I learned for myself, those triggers become much more frequent, they become much more sensitive, and I just am not as whole, healthy, happy person as I want to be.
And Angie, we want you whole, healthy, happy. I know you were rushed in sharing your story with us, but it really, that's an excellent, excellent example. And we're at time, it's 1 o'clock. I don't want to be disrespectful here to the audience. So anybody from Tempo, hop back on with me. This is what I can do. I can certainly make this presentation available to everybody online so you can have it. But the other thing that I can offer is that if you want to do a deeper dive with emotional intelligence, we just got to 2 of the areas and we did them very high level. I would be happy to come back and connect with you on your next Deconstructed EWL Professional Development Day. So I offer both of that to you, both the presentation and my services in the future if you want them. We can also send you resources on all of the topics that we talked about today. Tempo team, who's closing us out here? Do I have to stop sharing my screen?
I am going to be closing us out, and Marit will jump back in with the sharing. So I just wanted to thank you so much, Natalie. There's so much information, took so many notes. I'm really excited to test out the micro-win strategy. I actually have my little note card ready. We'd love to hear from all of you what things you are doing as your micro wins. So post in the Facebook group, start some conversations there. As Megan mentioned at the beginning of the call, we're going to be constructing our traditional day. So here on the screen are some other things that you can expect coming up over the next few months. The next part in our series will be a virtual roundtable discussions with Tempo members, which will happen in July. And I think I just heard Natalie offer to lead one of our sessions. We're going to focus on a lot of the information that we heard today. So to further that conversation with fellow EWL members and a Tempo member in a smaller group setting, so we can really dive into some conversation. That will happen in July. So make sure you look at your Monday messages and Facebook posts to find out more information about that. In October, we're going to be working with our Tempo Leadership Event Committee to organize a special experience for EWL members. So we're really excited about that. And we'll also be creating a resource library on our Tempo site, which can include some information about emotional intelligence and many other things that you heard today. Please make sure you let us know too if you have some recommendations. Feel free to send them into Tempo and we can get them posted up on that resource site as well. Our final announcement for the Professional Development Day is that we are going to be adjusting the timing of our in-person day in May, starting next year in 2021. Due to the timing of other events, May just felt like a better timing for the day, and we're really excited to get started planning with that. So next slide, please. And as always, please make sure you take a couple of seconds to complete this post-event survey that will be coming out. Your feedback is so important to us. And in this particular survey, we're actually going to be asking you which topics really resonated most with you so that we can work to plan those virtual roundtable discussions. Like I mentioned before, they will be led by Tempo members, and the response will really help us gauge how many groups we need and how we should organize those topics. And next slide, please. And finally, I would just like to give a big shout out and thanks before we wrap up to our fellow event committee members. We're really excited to plan this. We're able to have some fun while planning, and all of your content and contributions, expertise, and dedication means so much to Megan and I. So thank you guys for your work on this event and more to come. And I'd also like to thank Jana, Angie, and JESSI for sharing your experiences. We really appreciate your vulnerability on this call today. And I'd also like to thank all of you who we can't officially see, but thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us today. And I hope you are coming away with lots of takeaways just like I did. So thank you again, everyone. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your Thursday and have a great weekend.